Today's topic is going to be specifically talking through AI's impact on the legal realm. So I want to introduce our guest. Go ahead and introduce yourself, give a little bit of your background. I know we started talking through that, and give some
Yes.
of that context.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Jonathan. Good to have you as well. So my name is Mac Pierre Louis. I'm a lawyer, attorney, I'm a mediator, I'm an arbitrator, and I work throughout the states of Florida and Texas because I'm licensed in both states to practice law and to do mediations. Focus mainly on family law. However, I guess passion these days has been AI and AI technology and how it's changing almost everything we can see. The law is no exception. And so anytime I get a chance to come on and speak on this topic, like doing it. So thank you so much for having me on.
No, that's great. A great rundown. I think leading right into the thesis that I have that AI is going to impact about 50% of the workforce. Are you seeing any impacts in your industry?
Yep, absolutely. Well, first off, there's the theoretical and the things that we are, thinking might happen. And we talk a lot about these things in the legal circles. But then there's also the practical and the things that we do every day where we're trying to incorporate artificial intelligence into our offices. So I guess I can talk on both. I mean, on the first one, I'm not a savant or a guru. I wasn't, a coder by training. I didn't go to school for this kind of thing. I went to school first for political science, then a master's in education, and then finally I ended up in the legal field. AI has come a long ways. And so, because I have a natural interest in technology, just by, tinkering and learning things on YouTube, I've naturally gravitated toward it. So I say that to say that I don't know everything, obviously. And there are people who have been studying this stuff for decades and they don't know much either. That's what I've discovered. So whenever I discuss this, I like to talk about it in comparison to the internet. And so back in the early 90s, when the internet was starting to blossoming, I think people were trying to make predictions on what the internet of 30 years from, then would look like. I think those people would, tell you that they were fools, that they were unable to look in a crystal ball, that the things that we would say back in the 90s of what the internet might become would be so much further than our imaginations. So I think the same thing applies to AI. We are just beginning to scratch the surface. And so we can make our predictions, we can talk about how it's going to impact certain fields, but do we really know? And so I say it, I speak about this with humility, that we have no idea where this is going to take us to a degree. Have some concerns, obviously, but it's definitely changing the legal space. First off, legal research. All right. If you're a good lawyer, you have to know how to research. You have to know how to find case law that's going to support your arguments or be prepared with counter case law that's going to go against your positions. And imagine, back in the day, we would have to be going to a law library and get the law books. And then over the years, we got LexisNexis and Westlaw and these software programs that will allow us to quickly go and find the text, the particular law we want. But now we have AI that can do this for us and do comparisons for us and reason as close to reason as possible for us to find case law that would be pro or against, different legal positions in incredibly fast ways. So I think that's the basic, big deal of our time in the legal sector. And that is how you can, if you have the edge of AI, outdo your competition by being able to rely on the reasoning of artificial intelligence to be able to, just give you the legal analysis that would take you days and hours, and that should be translated to cheaper costs, right, for the client. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think that
Yes.
lawyers are going to pass on that savings. If for anything, it's going to cause more competition because now we all have the tools, and it's going to become. Anyway, I could talk about this all day, but I think that's the first thing, and that is the research field, the legal research. It's a big business. It's a closed, a few, big corporations, play in this space. But AI now has the power to let the little guy, like me, for example, to be able to tap into legal research in a ways that we could never do before.
Yeah, you actually you were going into the next question that I had, which if you didn't answer, I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
Is exactly that. I think AI allows you to do that analysis. And I did a little bit of research into how, I actually aspired to be a lawyer. So that was like my decision point. Do I go that route or do I
Yeah.
not? But I thought that it would significantly reduce the amount of time you had to do research, which should then lower the cost. But then do you think that would happen? I don't know, like how would that, because in my theory would be they would make a tool that then the law office would charge for that, if that makes sense. So we have a law tool, the legal research. So just like you would, I assume you could correct me if I'm wrong.
Mhm.
The legal assistant does some analysis for you. They
Yeah.
bill for that. I do some analysis as a lawyer. I bill you for that, and then combine you and you end with your total cost.
Yeah. So yeah, traditionally you would get a legal bill from your law office that bills per hour, and a lot of times one of the line items on that is legal research. But let's keep in mind, most of the time the law is very static. It's slow to change, and so most of the time you're not every day doing legal research. So don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that legal research that's being impacted by AI is somehow going to be the thing that we're all going to be spending time on. I mean, in family law, for example, we have our statutes. The law doesn't change. Every, September, the legislature might come out with some new, laws. But for the most part, Texas family law, for example, has basically been the same for a number of decades. So the situations where this comes up is when you have unique circumstances where you are wanting to find case law to support your position so that you can persuade a judge or persuade a jury. Well, jury is going to be more of a fact finder, but a judge, when they're making decisions on the law and they want positions for or against, to help them make the decision, they might tell both sides to write a legal brief. Well, imagine being able to put that legal brief into an AI to be able to give you the edge. So definitely, there's gonna come, there's gonna be a cost to the lawyer to use a tool to produce the product, but then the customer, which is really what the question is about, the customer wants to save money, and they think to themselves, well, gee, artificial intelligence is here. If a robot can do this analysis, why am I going to be paying you, to spend the hours and hours before? I think what's probably going to happen is, since both sides are going to be having the same tool, both you and your opponent, is going to kind of be a wash. If not that, then you're going to be finding yourself getting into really expensive tools, because now you're trying to, it's going to be a war of tools. There's a few, again, big players in town that focus on developing AI tools. Lots of small startups, obviously, but traditionally, just so you know, these tools are very expensive. And this is why lawyers charge so much, because we got to cover that overhead. And the AI part of it is still expensive. But who knows what's going to happen in terms of costs. I just think that we as attorneys are just going to find a way to keep the cost up, and the clients may not know any better, honestly. I know that state of Florida and state of Texas are, the bars anyway, the state bars are trying to write regulations that you have to, let the public know, let your clients that you contract with know how you're implementing AI in their legal work. Don't know if lawyers are going to be honest about that, honestly. I just don't think that's going to happen, because how I don't know. It's a lot. In terms of passing on the cost, that's my prediction. I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, I kind of think the same thing. And I think so you understand my position is, I think when, you have these doomsday people who are saying AI is going to take over the world, or they're going to take your jobs. I think, in my opinion, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but AI is probably not going to do that. But people who are effective at using the AI.
Correct.
And so I think that's kind of what you're getting at is you can still be an expert in law, but now you still have to be an expert in using the AI so that you can faster get to the end point.
Correct. And I think it says a lot about the validity of our licenses after all this, because if the same AI that's in these legal tools spills over to the regular internet, and now the regular Joe Schmo has access to these, legal tools that's able to reason case law, well, are lawyers even necessary anymore? I mean, what's the value of our law licenses if we're now going to be competing against any pro se person. A person, pro se means someone who has no lawyer, but a person who can go to court and come, with in hand the legal arguments that they need that they got from artificial intelligence. I know people have been laughed out of court in recent years because the AI wasn't that good and the product was not that good, and you could tell it was kind of, garbage. But I think it's getting so smart to where there's going to be a lot of people who will represent themselves because they think that they have this tool now that can give them an edge that before they lacked.
That's interesting. I haven't thought about it in that way. And, one of the topics so a lot of have two type of podcasts. So this is like an interview type. The other type is more interviewing with the AI to see what the AI is saying.
Yeah.
And one of the big impacts it predicts is that there's going to be an over-reliance on AI. And so you as a lawyer would degrade your capabilities of your law degree and, really rely on the AI to get through the schooling and not be as good of a lawyer. So I didn't think about it from that perspective of people going to represent themselves. So that's an interesting topic.
Well, of course, there's lawyers who focus on litigation and go to the courtroom thing, and then there are lawyers who focus on just more civil work and they just sit in an office all day. I'm a litigator because I have to be because of family law, but I don't know if AI is going to give a pro se person that much of an edge in the courtroom. I think that's still a very human-centric thing because you're trying to persuade a human being at the end of the day. But when it comes to employment law and other areas that are more transactional in nature, that don't require the acting, so to speak, of the courtroom, I think that's where things might level out a little bit, with people who don't have law degrees, but they do have technology in their corner.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. What are your thoughts about AI regulations? Because from what you mentioned earlier, law and regulation kind of move slow, and
Correct.
AI is evolving at a rapid exponential rate.
Yeah. So I think, first off, we want slow law. Generally, for society, that's a good thing. In law school, you learn about the common law, and you learn that the common law, or what we call judge-made law, takes centuries to develop. First in England, and then it moved over to America. But in our common law system, we appreciate the fact that the law and the rules of law that we've come to appreciate, mainly in civil cases, in criminal as well, has taken many, many years to develop because time allows for testing, and we can, make mistakes and then correct it. And over time, we would hope and think that the law is getting better, and people over time get used to it. But technology and AI is moving so fast. This is where my concern is. It's moving so fast. We're not having a chance to test these things. And so we're going into regulation, and we're going to be creating laws that's going to say this is permitted and this is not. But we haven't had a chance to test any of this. It's going so rapid. So I don't know where that takes us. That's a scary thing to say, honestly. I was doing some research, and out in Stanford University, there's the AI index, the Artificial Intelligence Index by Stanford University. And it's online, you can Google it. But the current 2024 AI index report is one of the, it's like, how many pages is this thing? It's probably, it's hundreds of pages that discuss where things stand right now in terms of regulations. I had a map earlier. I saw that the U.S. is by far the leader in regulations and national level laws that have, been put into the pipeline compared to the EU, compared to other countries that are just now beginning to, bring this to the legislatures so they can start passing, laws. But here's a quote I got from it. The number of AI regulations in the U.S. sharply increased in 2024. The number of AI-related regulations in the U.S. has risen significantly in the past year and a half, over the last 5 years. In 2023, there were 25 AI-related regulations, up from just one in 2016. And so the fact is, because of the attention that AI is bringing to this space, lawmakers, politicians are all getting on board, and they're concerned, right? They have constituents who listen to them, who want to tell them what they believe, and everyone's getting kind of scared. Job losses, deep fakes, just all the negative potential that might happen. And so, no surprise, then politicians are going to come around and start passing rules. But even though they're doing that, and even though the U.S. is like the leader in having all of these different regs that are popping up, I'm just concerned that we're going to overcorrect, that we're going to potentially violate free speech, because a lot of AI intersects very, very, closely to your own freedom of speech, First Amendment protection, so that you can be able to say what you want, including creating art. Things that you might consider art, but somebody else considers stealing their intellectual property. You see this affecting movies and music. You see this affecting people's personalities, whether it's Scarlett Johansson, that whole brouhaha that happened recently about her voice allegedly being stolen by OpenAI. So the regs are there, they're happening, but they're being forced to happen really, really fast due to the changes that are happening technologically rapidly. And that's something that we've never had happen before. And that's the only part that gives me pause and concern, because I'm afraid that we're going to overcorrect, and some politicians are going to think that they know better, and they're going to start putting their hands down when they don't know anything. Just like we didn't know about the internet back in the 90s. It's the same kind of thing.
I wanted to talk through the deep fakes. So are there regulations on that? So I can give you my opinion on regulation. I'm a proponent of less government, less regulation.
Yep.
This is kind of my stance on it. I think there's a balancing act. So I think that's probably why, you can correct me I think the symbol for you guys is like a scale, right?
Yeah.
So it's like a balancing act,
Yeah,
and so I think there's this balancing act, but the challenge that we face as a country is that other countries are trying to develop AI that may not have those regulations, so they can blow past those challenges and really create. Although America is kind of like the creator of innovation, so there's that challenge. But what are your thoughts about the deep fakes and regulations impacting that?
Yep. So all the top LLMs in the world are right now in the US, okay, and China and other countries trying to catch up. And we have the benefit or not so benefit of living in an open society. When you're in an open society, then things are being done transparently to a degree, unless it impacts national security. But other countries are developing all this stuff secretly, privately, and maybe experimenting with things in ways that might give us pause and concern. And so we're having to do all our dirty laundry out in the open publicly at a national level. And so I don't have any specific law right now before me that I can point to about deep fakes. I will tell you that there's regs that are being discussed on it. I know the White House right now is talking about an AI Bill of Rights, for individuals. It's on their website right now. People can check it out. But it's the blueprint for an AI Bill of Rights, because again, we're all moving so quickly. We haven't had time to come up with what is going to be included. But if there's anything that happens in this area in terms of regs, I think it's going to be completely pointless unless it's done corporately with other countries. I don't see, because of the age of the internet and how information travels. Okay, early I'm on Twitter or X, and I might be following somebody in Pakistan, and so we're all so it's a small world now because of tech and the web. And so I don't see how any regulation in the U.S. with regards to deep fakes and punishing bad actors who are trying to interfere in the election or creating fake content that doesn't exist to trick the end user. I don't see how that's going to have any impact if somebody 2,000 miles away can get away with it and interfere with our own elections. And so that's, of course, where my concern lies when it comes to deep fakes, and that is election integrity. Because if we don't have elections that you can trust, politicians that are right in front of your eyes, right, who are saying things who you believe is coming from their mouth as a real human being, if we don't have trust in that, well, then what do we have left? If our if our society potentially is going to be, run a system of lies. But let's be fair, we've always had, liars, right? That's always been around. It's just that the technology is allowing it to potentially trick millions of people to see something that is not actually true. So that's the part that I think, yes, you do have to have regs on it, maybe making big tech put labels or create some kind of system that's going to say, yes, this is artificially created. This is not the actual politician's or candidate's words. This is not the musician's words, or this is not the person's body. This is not. We have to have some kind of marker to differentiate it. And I think over time we'll get there, because nobody wants to be tricked. Nobody wants to be lied to. So it's scary, but
Mm-hmm. And
what are your thoughts? I mean, I'm generally with you on the more live and let live libertarian leaning philosophies. I actually am very much pro that. It's just that when it comes to deepfake, I'm also concerned that we're not going to be able to have elections we can trust if we can't trust the words that are coming out of the perceived mouth of the politician that's in front of us.
yeah, that's very challenging too, because then you start going into the misinformation campaigns. And
Yeah.
one statistic that I found that was pretty interesting a while back, I was doing some reading, and one of the things that the Soviets or the Russians did in their time is they found out that if you put out the first to put out information is what people believe, even
Mhm.
if they found out that information was wrong, you still would go back to believe what you heard first. So
Yeah.
that's very challenging, because if you're putting out this misinformation faster, which could impact the elections, but how do you do that without infringing on people's rights? And then later that information may be actually true, like the COVID pandemic that's coming out. And we
Mhm.
can go into that topic. But I do
Yeah.
want, you did mention one thing, and I want to hit this topic because I was reading
Sure.
something and I don't want to go into conspiracy theories, but hear this out, right? I was
Sure.
reading an article. I have, I like to create things with AI. So what I
Yep.
did was I created an AI news thing where it does it automatically. And one of the news that it selected was there's a guy. I can find the article. I'll send it over to you. He started to download his wife's personality into an AI.
Okay.
And so I heard you mention the AI Bill of Rights. So
Yep.
now we have a person who is getting, let's use the terms right, the person who is training the AI to behave like their family member.
Yep.
Say the family member passes away. Now, what rights does that AI have if you want to perceive it as a person or?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's not conspiracy theory at all. It's these are the things we have to all be forced to talk through and wonder. Wow, we've never had to be presented with these thought questions before, but now because of the technology, we don't know where this is going. It's moving so fast. We haven't had time to digest it,
Mhm.
and there's a million of those, right? So no, I don't think that's a far-fetched discussion to have. 10 years ago, it would
Yeah,
be,
what
but and what was that Netflix series, Black Mirror, right?
Black Mirror,
Where
yep.
they always had some crazy thing that you could have never imagined, but some of the episodes are literally coming true before our
Mhm.
eyes because of AI. No, I think the artificial bill of rights thing is really going where I hope it goes towards concepts of protecting the individual. I'm a big individualist. I think that if as long as we stay focused on treating humans, individual humans, with dignity, then I think we'll be okay. If that's like the guiding star, if we can make sure we're treating people okay and making sure that AI is here to help us not hurt the individual, I think we'll be okay. But what happens after death and a person's, persona, quote unquote, is being placed into some AI, model in order to give it a prompt, and then this is what Sandy, who passed away, would say. Yeah, that boggles my mind. I don't know. But while Sandy's living, I think we need to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make sure that the individual is being treated with respect and dignity. That's fundamental. If we can hold on to that, I think that we'll be fine through the whole, um, you know, um, pros and cons that come up
So,
in AI. Yeah.
I think that aligns more with what you do, because when a family member may pass away, now does the family member have to create a will or put it into a trust so that who controls that information of what they've created. And I was doing some research right now on the AI Bill of Rights, and it kind of governs the guidelines on a broad initiative of managing the risk associated with the AI. So I kind of think, when you said Bill of Rights, I thought that went right to what rights the AI has. And so I think maybe I was a little confused with that.
Yeah, the individual.
Mm-hmm. And so let's play that out. So they download or they train the AI to act like a person. The person has all this. Well, is that treated like a book that maybe that person wrote and like their diary, and it goes to the next family member or whoever they put in their will?
Well, I mean, I have no idea because we haven't tested this stuff out. But intellectual property, that's really the domain, right? And the question becomes who has ownership of it. It's kind of like when a famous musician dies and their family, creates an estate, and their estate continues living or existing, I should say. And so that's going to get into estate laws. The probate courts are going to have to figure this out. And of course, we're going to have politicians who are going to put their hands into this and try to set up the rules. But the rules still need to be tested by judges. Ultimately, it's scary to say that potentially in the U.S. anyway, 9 unelected members of our society might get to decide these big questions of meaning, purpose, life, death when it comes to artificial intelligence. But here we are. I think that's probably why I'm a big proponent of referendums. We need to, when we're getting to these kind of questions and issues and topics, we need to put them before the voters, so that we can get as many voices to have an input as possible, instead of just a small number of people who think that they know best when we have no idea.
Now, okay, so now let's walk you through this, and you can correct me where I'm wrong because you're the expert in the legal field. In my mind, I think there's a standpoints where the judge is using AI. Do you think, or do you have any input on if judges are using AI?
So using AI to maybe help them summarize, documents faster. The practical stuff, I think, of course, we're all going to, want that drug, that leg up to help us do our work better. But to use it in order to, get support in analysis, to use it in order to be persuaded one way or another about which way they should go on a decision, that I don't know. I would imagine that ethically there are going to be promulgated, judicial, rules by the state bars that would block that kind of thing. Just because we have to rely on judicial reasoning, but we have an appeals process. So if we think that a judge might make an error, then we can always appeal them to go to another level. But ultimately, it's going to have to stop somewhere. And that Supreme Court, that's where it's going to end up in our country anyway. So I guess I predict in 5 years we're going to have a whole lot of cases that are going to be resolved ultimately by these judges. And
you got me thinking right now. And one of the things I want to ask you real quick is bias. Is there? So could you appeal on a judge being biased towards a topic?
Well, you can of course appeal if you think that a court is making an unsound, reason that is not based on the law, right? Because that's what we have. We have rule of law, and it has to have, legal reasoning that's based in the law. However, we have a lot of law that's based on discretion. Family law, for example, is heavily, dependent on a judge's discretion, but that's on purpose. For example, in Texas, the legislature gives Texas family judges, district court judges, a lot of discretion on what they're going to do when it comes to custody over kids, for example. And that might be a good thing because judge is a human being, and we want this judge to be able to look the mother and the father in the eye and talk to the child if they're over 12, have somebody go do a home visit, for example. We need a judge to be able to have empathy and understand what's in the kid's best interest and make a decision that neither parent might like, but the judge has been empowered to decide based on their own belief on what's best for the child. Now, you can appeal that judge based on a standard we call abuse of discretion. That judge, you went too far, that you've abused the discretion, that power that you were given by the state. You've abused it. You went too far, and it's not based on any kind of a reasonable person would not come to that conclusion. And so I think much the same way, if we are dealing with a certain kind of law, or case that's dependent on very strict statutory interpretations, then the judge is not going to have very much wiggle room. But once we start getting into an area of law like family cases, for example, where a judge is going to make a decision based on their own discretion, that we might think that's just on a whim. That judge woke up, in that morning kind of pissed off at the world, and they took it out on you because they could, because they have discretion. Well, then that is kind of where it's a little bit more scary, because I don't see how AI is really going to interfere too much with that, because you're basing it on a judge's gut feeling. But again, we kind of need that, though, because if we don't have that, we're going to be letting society and robots make decisions over families, and we need a human touch.
Yeah, I completely agree. So I'm with that 100%. And I think I understand what you're saying, and I fully acknowledge that. And I think having the human element is very important. But where I was going at with that one was I could see a process of someone arguing if a judge or if someone used AI for their argument and the AI was trained in the wrong way and forced a decision that was not favoring the person. And they could say, well, you made that decision that was not, maybe it was biased, or it was it was outside of case law or statute law. And then you could bring up the argument that the AI that you used to make that decision was very ineffective.
A person can, but we may just be getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, because ultimately, if the judge is reading, supported briefs that's written by a computer, the judge still has to ultimately have the last say on whether or not they're going to go along with it. I
think it's more like you're saying it's just another tool. It's just like you're using your book and your legal, your case laws, and it's how you interpret it, how you use it, and how effective you are at using it. But ultimately, the judge makes that decision off their past cases and their experiences. And I think it goes down to, I like the way America is set up, where you have your big federal, and then you have each state. And as you get more narrow, you're trying to get towards the moral and ethical standards of that area, which I think many people don't really understand how it breaks down and why it's kind of broken down like that, especially with the controversy with Roe versus Wade. The argument for that isn't going into should the right be there, but I think it's pushing the rights down to the states. And I don't think many people understand that process either.
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot could be said, on that topic, and I haven't actually thought through, the morality of it and how AI, could go into that space. But we have seen AI being used in courts already, and most of the time when it gets in the news, it's because it blew up in the lawyer's face, because the lawyer was using LLMs that were basically hallucinating and making up fake law that doesn't even exist, making up cases that doesn't exist. So it's right now we're still in uncharted territory, and I think we just need to talk maybe 3, 4, 5 years from now and see where we are.
Yeah, no. So actually, I wanted to go retrospectively. So now let's go back to law school, and how would this have helped you in law school and going through that process?
Yeah, I was thinking about this the other day, and I was like, it would help me because I like technology and I would use it. But then there are a whole lot of other people who might think like me, and if they do, then is there really an edge anymore? If we all have access to ChatGPT and we're able to, or let's say you have access to ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini, because now you're getting all these tools these days where you can have multiple models, that are able to give you their version of the answer. So just imagine that. I saw recently a tool that I guess it's for cheaters. You can, and I can't believe they're marketing it, but you can have this chat program write your essays for you. Just give it the prompt, and then they will help guarantee that it's foolproof, that the person who's grading it is not going to be able to tell whether or not it's true or false. I mean, that's a whole new world, but I can't imagine, having gone to law school, how competitive it was Okay, how lawyers are trying to be in the top of their class because they want the big jobs out of law school. I can't imagine all of us having the same access to all these tools and trying to outdo one another with it. So I think one of your guests one of these days should be a current law student because it's been about 15 years since I've been out of law school.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm glad those days are gone.
Yeah.
Law school was no joke.
Hopefully I can find one. So it was very,
Yeah,
I didn't think it was very competitive. Like you're saying, I just thought you went to law
absolutely.
school, you finished the bar, you moved on.
No. You have stories of law students hiding law library books so that their opponents can't find it. I mean, it's stupid,
Wow.
but yeah, law school it's all about grades, and the better the grades, the better the jobs at the end of the day. So, but
So
yeah,
yeah, let's close this out a little and see. I want to give you some time,
sure,
explain some projects you're working on, where you're from, give
sure.
that background so that we can give you some shout outs, and I'll post everything into this.
Yeah, thank you. So my big thing right now is to do a little bit less litigation and case law and move more towards tech and helping other lawyers. I've been tinkering with WordPress, for example, since 2010, and every website that I've ever got my hands on, I'm the one who did it. So alongside the law, I was also playing with just the tech tools. And along the way, I found these different these different platforms that would sell you, business software. And so I've played with a whole tons of them. So I got into this big thing called interoperability. Interoperability basically means how do you take different tools and make them work together. You might know things like Zapier, for example, where you're able to connect different tools. I've always thought that this is the future. The future is not for you to be stuck in your walled garden, but the future is for you to take all the tools that help you and use them effectively, cohesively in a way that helps. So that's why, a couple of years ago, I started the idea called a hub site, basically where you have a website, but you're able to put different tools together on your website so that it's your own custom platform. I'm launching it out pretty soon called lmihubsites.com, focused on lawyers and mediators. Because as you might know, I have a podcast myself called lmipodcast.com that stands for Lawyers Mediators International. And we're always talking about family law, civil law, AI in the law, anything and everything that deals with the law and conflict resolution. That's my passion these days, is law and resolving people's problems. But along the way, I'd like to also, help open the door for other lawyers who want to get involved in using technology in their offices. And I think the law office of the future is literally your website. That's it. It's so simple. And this is why I don't call them websites. I call them hub sites, because the website is your hub. It's the one place that people should be going to. So anyway, that's going to be developing over the next number of months, and I'm trying to, get it popularized. But that is to help lawyers and mediators know that they already have a virtual office in cyberspace, that COVID taught us that you don't need, the physical brick and mortar anymore. Now we can be anywhere. And as long as you're licensed to practice law in your jurisdiction, you can reach potentially thousands of clients who need your help, and not, limiting yourself to, a specific geographic area anymore, but using your website to be the place, the center, your hub that helps meet and connect and satisfy people's needs. So yeah, that's what I'm working on, and I'll be talking more about it on the LMI podcast. And again, that stands for Lawyers Mediators International.
No, I think you have a great idea. And once you're saying that, it's kind of going in my head. I'm thinking about the background process of how it's working, and I could see it. I could see it actually working really, really well. So I think it's a really good idea. And so hopefully you can get that going. And if you need any help, let me know, because that actually does sound like a really viable option to at least expedite the process, because you could
Correct.
have 90% of the job complete through that workflow.
Exactly.
And so, yeah, I think that's a very good idea. So
Thank you.
thank you for joining us. Go check out his podcast. We'll have all the links in the description below, and like and subscribe. And thank you for joining us.
Awesome. Thanks so much.